Welcome to the Writer Reads Luck Among Servants, Part 4. Once Marriott had left us and was hurrying back to the building from which she'd come, the rider turned about. "This way," he said. "Marriott will just have to catch up." He moved more slowly this time, keeping a hand on my shoulder as we went. Marriott caught us as we turned a corner and headed toward the edge of town. "Are you sure?" she asked, looking in the direction we were going as she helped me into the coat. "Yes," he said. "I'll let you know how it goes when we're done." I wasn't sure how I felt about this, but didn't argue. Whatever lay ahead could be no worse than what lay behind. Besides, what other choice did I have? We followed the road to the edge of the village and then kept following it to where it turned into a narrow trail. At first I thought it led to the water, but then I realized it took a parallel path to the river. We were just passing beneath the trees at the forest's edge when a commotion erupted behind us. "Drannan!" someone called, but my guide merely walked faster. I hurried after him, trying to keep up and failing. Pain burned through the muscles in my injured leg, and the side where the bandages lay thickest felt strangely hot. My head was starting to pulse with a heartbeat of its own as he raced on ahead. There was no point in trying to keep up. I just couldn't. My body wouldn't let me. Instead, I set myself the task of staying upright and following the path. Sooner or later, I would find him. It ended up being sooner rather than later. Drannan, if that was his name, returned back along the path, appearing from around a bend with several figures accompanying him. At first I thought it was the shadows and dim forest light that made it hard to see them, but then I realized that those accompanying him blended with the trees. Knowing they would reach me soon, I stopped, and that was a mistake, because my leg gave out beneath me and dumped me in the dirt. They gathered around me, concern etching their faces, but I looked to the rider for direction. He reached down and drew me back to my feet, keeping one arm around my waist to steady me. I stared at the creatures with him and felt just a little bit afraid. "What do you say?" Drennan demanded. "Will she do?" I glanced up at him in horror. He was selling me to the monsters! Something of what I was thinking must have been clear by my expression. "It's not that," he said. "You're not to be sold. These are the Saparine. They're lizard folk, friends to the Spurline. They wanted to meet with you." "Why?" "You spoke to your mount and were not afraid. If it had been a real Spurline, it would have understood you." The world shifted and I leant on him. "What do you mean?" This time one of the Saparine answered me. "He means you can direct the creatures with your mind, and that you might be a liaison between us and the dragon." "Dragon?" The Saparine looked at Drennan. "You did not say she was slow of mind?" "She is not," Drennan replied, "but she is injured." As if to punctuate his words, another man came running down the path. "Drennan!" he shouted. "She's not well enough to leave the hospice. She's—" He stopped, as though noticing the Saparine for the first time. "She—" He turned to the lizard folk. "Forgive me for the interruption." I was feeling tired again. My leg was hurting, but leaning on Drennan meant I did not have to put any weight on it. My side throbbed and a dull ache spread through my stomach and back. If I did not sit down soon, I was going to fall down. Drannan's support or no. I just wanted them to get done with whatever it was they needed to decide. "We will care for her from here," said one of the Saparine, who had questioned my intelligence. "The wound was inflicted by one of our creatures." But you don't know anything about humans and how they heal," he managed. I saw the Saparine's jaws drop in what I later learned was a reptilian smile. "We know enough for this," their leader said. He looked straight at Drannan. "We will return Marriott's coat when we have replaced it with something more suitable." I "Okay," Drannan agreed, and passed me to the Saparine's arms when the lizard man reached for me. I did not resist the transfer or being lifted from the ground, and I fell asleep on the journey back to their caverns. I cannot recall when, but I do know that I did not walk the full distance. I was carried, and somewhere along the way I realized I had whoops. I was carried, and somewhere along the way I realized I'd already met the three warriors walking beside the one who held me in his arms. They'd been disguised as a spur line, right up until they'd called Drennan from the sky. It was an interesting thought to fall asleep to, almost as interesting as waking wrapped in spider silk sheets and cattail stuffed blankets, but not as interesting as having to dress in a gown of spider silk and reed fiber under their healer's watchful eye. You will be fine, he said, but you will need a slow beginning as you gain strength. A slow beginning, but a beginning nonetheless, he told me, and one, I think, that will compensate for the past.